Okay, the time is 12 right now here in Saskatchewan. So we get started. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Deborah Hadewale, and I am delighted to be your host for this edition of webinar hosted by International Youth in Canadian Agriculture. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. We will begin with a presentation from our guest speaker, followed by a Q&A session. The webinar is scheduled to last approximately 1 hour. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box. We will address as many as we can during the Q&A session. If you experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat function to let us know, and our support team will assist you. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be put on our website, IYCA.ca, after the session. Now, without further ado, I am pleased to introduce our speaker, Becky McCray. Becky is the co-founder of SaveYour.Town, the organization that shares practical advice for rural communities. Becky has worked with communities across the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia to spark economic growth and innovation. Our work, including the survey of rural challenges, has been used by agencies, businesses, and universities. Becky, please feel free to share more about yourself with our audience. Today, Becky will be talking about idea-friendly method. Becky, thank you again for being here today, and you can take it away.
Deborah, thank you so much. Timoteo, also thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak with you today. As Deborah said, when you have questions, or if anything that I say particularly resonates with you and that you find it powerful, please repeat it in the chat so that I'll know which pieces are most useful for you. We will talk about the idea-friendly method today because all of your life, wherever you go and whatever you do for work, you are going to be a member of a community. You will be part of a group of people coming together wherever you're living. And you will always have ideas and things that you would like to have happen that will make your community a better place. And so to help you make those ideas happen, I will be sharing the idea-friendly method, and I'll talk about some examples of how it works. And as I go through them, I will ask you a few times to make some notes to help you work through your own ideas with this method. And then after that, we will have time for this open discussion of your ideas and how I can possibly help you to make them happen more easily. So feel free to ask questions about your own specific situation or your own community. The idea-friendly method is something that I created because I felt that there was this disconnect between the old way that we had been working together for most of my life and the new communications tools that we started to have in the 2000s and in the 2010s. It was suddenly more easy to put things together. For example, I served on a statewide board for a professional women's organization, and it took us a full year to plan and to create each event. And so each year we would have the same events on our calendar, and then we would take that full year of working and planning and assigning to committees, receiving reports, approving. That entire process took an entire year for each event. And then around 2010 or so, some friends and I decided to put together an event for ourselves for online tools. And we put that together in 6 weeks. And we had a couple of hundred people come together in person from across the US and some from Canada. And it struck me how different the experience was between what we had to do when we were doing it the traditional way with all of the structure and the committees, and what we just pulled together as ourselves in just 6 weeks. So I would like for you right now to think about an idea that you have for your community, and I would like you to actually write that down right now, at least a word or two about something that you would like to see happen wherever it is that you live. And if you're ready to go on, you can just put OK in the chat, and then I'll know that you are ready to go on. Okay, I'm not seeing any chat. So Deborah, I'm going to presume that we are ready to move on. And then you can let me know if there's something strange about how the chat is working that I wasn't expecting, because I don't see any responses from people. Now,
sure, I will let you know.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. So the 3 parts of the idea-friendly method, what we'll be using for the rest of our talk, is to begin with, you gather your crowd. And that is using your big idea. You want to bring together the people who also support that. And then you and your crowd, you turn that crowd into a powerful network by building connections between them and also building connections to the resources that you need. And then you and your newly powerful network accomplish your goal by lots of you taking small steps. So there's all 3 parts of the idea-friendly method. Gather your crowd, build connections, and take small steps. So I'll share an example of each one of those parts. Let's start with gathering your crowd. When I was in Saskatchewan last year, I met a young woman named Heidi Johnson Timko, who told me that she had started a running club. She was a runner. She had just moved to a new community and she wanted to meet people. So she decided she would start a running club, and she simply posted it, announced on Facebook that she was starting a running club. She looked around the town and found a small suggested route that they could run together. And she invited people to offer other suggestions of where they might go. Now, Heidi is a very long distance race runner, but because she was building community, she did not make this a very long distance race type run. She started by making it and told people in her initial announcement, this is an easy run or walk. And this worked. People from the community responded to her. They joined in, and then they came to that initial session for their easy run and walk. Now, when she heard me present the idea-friendly method last year, she decided to see if they could take this a step further. She thought they might like to take on the challenge of helping the school upgrade the running track for the students in that town. And so she will be going through the idea-friendly method again. She will start with gathering her crowd, finding who from within the club is interested in this project, as well as other people from in the community. And some of her club members may not be interested, and that's okay. But that is her process. She'll announce that, talk to people about it, and bring them in to help design it together. So how might you gather your crowd around your idea with an experience? And I would like you to write that down now. And I see the chat function is working. So if you would like to, actually that just came to host and panelists. Let's see if I don't see that I can chat to everyone, but I can chat to the other hosts. But hopefully you are on your end able to chat to everybody. So once you get this written down, how might you gather your crowd with an experience? You might toss an okay into the chat to let me know, or I'll just wait just a couple of minutes to let you make a note. The next part of the idea-friendly method, once you have gathered your crowd, is to build connections. And this is the part where you make sure that people talk to each other so that they share ideas, they make your idea even better, and they start to believe that they're going to get to play a role in it. So building connections is a lot about conversations, discussion, opportunities for people to meet each other. And an example of that came from Baker, Montana, which has a population of about 1,800 people. Now, they learned about the idea-friendly method at an extension event, which is part of a university event that was held in their state. And a couple of people from Baker attended and participated, learned the idea-friendly method, and they received $500 in seed money as a grant to get themselves started with an idea-friendly project. And those couple of people, they were interested in doing something that would encourage more art and creativity in their community. So starting by putting that conversation out into the public to gather their crowd, they found more people interested in art and creativity. And they decided to put on an art walk, which is an event that is normally held in the downtown or the business district or high street area of the community. So in front of the local businesses, they displayed art for people to look at and for sale. And so it's an opportunity for people to come to a specific location with a specific purpose that's related to their idea. So their idea is art and creativity. So an art display and sale makes a lot of sense. And doing it near their local businesses gave it a central place for it to happen. So they put on that art walk, that event in an evening, and they had a lot of conversations with all of the people who came out, and using their $500 in seed money to advertise and promote, and to put on all of the other things that they needed to do to create their event. But that brought people together, and the conversations led them then to form a small group that started to work on their next project around art and creativity. And the next project they decided to take on was to put on a community theater production, because that's what they were interested in. And so they started building connections. They talked and reached out to lots of people in the community to find a location for this theater production, how they would find their costumes and props and everything they needed to put on the theater. And they had a very successful first production, and they raised over $21,000 from that initial $800 they got from the art walk, from that initial $500 that they got in seed money. So it's a very successful way that they were able to have the conversations that led them to the resources they need. But you'll notice they did it using an experience. You may have written down an idea related to an experience to draw people into your idea. And how could you take that a step further so that it's going to help people to have conversations and to build connections? And I would like you to write that down now, and I'll just give you just a minute or two to write that down. Now it's time for the third part of the idea-friendly method, which is to take small steps. You want to give everyone a small but meaningful role so that they play a role in your idea, because that is part of building community. And it makes it easier to do if, first of all, you're not having to do everything. And second of all, if more people feel like they own a part of it, they have belonging, and that idea is also something that belongs to them. An example of this comes from Rostern, Saskatchewan, which has a population of about 1,700 people. And they decided they have a local nonprofit that serves people with disabilities and many other people in their community. And they wanted to do a project that would make people feel like they were part of the community together. Many times people with disabilities feel like they are excluded from community. So part of this idea was to make it a whole community. They designed a mural, a large painting on boards that they could mount to different buildings. So they designed this mural. They wanted to, as they talked about different themes they might do, they came up with the idea of a circle design, because the circle to them represented coming together as a group, including everyone, and being whole as a community. And so that was their theme, was a circle design. And they held open gatherings for people to come down and to paint the design. So it was almost like a party in the main part of their downtown near the business district. So they had people coming in, they served some refreshments, drinks, and then they had all of their boards laid out so that people could help paint. They had the paint and brushes and everything available. So everyone got to play a role, whether they helped provide and serve drinks, or they helped to do the painting itself, or they were assisting others. Everyone was playing a part of it. And because it was something tangible like that, it was something they could see. If you helped paint one part of one board, you painted one circle, then you will feel like you are part of that. And so when those mural boards were mounted on the buildings downtown, you know that people point to that and say, I helped paint that. That's something that I belong to as well. So they called their project Ross Turn Paints Together. And the idea of sharing this experience of community building helped them to give everybody a meaningful role. So whether you painted one circle or you helped put on the entire event, you played a meaningful role. So looking back to the idea of something that you want to do in your community, how can you give small but meaningful roles to as many people as possible? And I would like for you to write that down now. And if I can get permission to share my screen, I can show you a photo of what the murals, the little circle murals, looked like in Ross Turn. So I've sent that request. If you can approve that, then I'll share my screen and show everyone. Now, I do want to answer one more thing before we go to the Q&A, and that is to be prepared for skeptical responses. Part of being a newcomer to a community, which many of you are doing, you have traveled internationally, you're being involved in new communities, is that you will hear very skeptical responses from people as they say things like, we tried that once, or they will say, that's not how we do things. Or even if they're just a little bit rude, they may say, that's never going to work. Or they may say more politely, slow down and let us ask questions, and we want to talk it over before you try to do it. Now, often these people are attempting to help you avoid failure. They have seen something like it in the past, or their own experience tells them maybe this won't work, but they just don't have great tools to help you try it in a new way. But that's what the idea-friendly method is for. It is so that you can find out what is going to work one small step at a time, so that you are experimenting with each step, learning what works, and then building upon that. So the other part of that is not to worry too much about people who don't want to help you, because they are not part of your crowd. And I want you to find the people who are part of your crowd. Okay. At this point, I did see a question that I thought popped up, and there it is. The importance of gathering your crowd. What are some creative ways for students or newcomers to do this, especially if they don't have many connections yet to the rural communities in Canada? And I would love to hear more about, what your particular idea is, because I can make a specific answer to the particular idea that you're working on. Or if you don't have a specific idea, that's okay as well. Gathering your crowd, if you're, the example I gave was Heidi, who started the running club. She had just moved to that community for her work. And so one of the things she had done is look for the local groups on Facebook. Like there is usually for each community, even rural communities will have a buy-sell group, or sometimes it may be called a flea market group. But if you search for the name of the community that you are going to be living in or that you are looking at, you can often find these local groups. There's one for my town that's called Rant and Rave. And so it has quite a bit of negativity as well as positive things that are going on. So that's probably not where I would take my idea as a newcomer. However, there was one also that is the town I live near it's called Good News about Alva. So it's Alva Good News. That's the one I would put my new idea into, because there's people who are specifically trying to be positive about things. Exactly the kind of people you would like to connect with in your community. So I recommend looking for groups on Facebook as a great starting point. Another one is to look for any existing organizations, groups, clubs, activities. If you have a specific community already that you are part of, then look for that community and what is already going on within it. If there is a public library, find out what activities and organizations and whether they have events, do they have a book club, what kind of things can you get involved with in that community, simply to start meeting some initial individuals. If your idea is like a running club, then you can simply announce it, say in that positive good news group, and say, we'd like to form a running club or a kayaking club or a book club, or I want to connect with other young people working in agriculture. Start with those tools that are already kind of socially oriented as one way to get started. Another is simply to take, if you have connections through your workplace, or if you're looking at lots of communities. That's the other thing I think might be helpful, is many of you may not have decided where you're going to be going, and you may be looking at multiple communities or have an interest in different areas. And so I would start monitoring what I could find, either setting up some search alerts online that will bring you stories and information about those communities to learn about the areas that you are interested in, or to I think that this group that you're part of, the AYCA, is also, or IYCA, is also an excellent resource for you of connecting with other people that potentially have already graduated and are living in other communities, to give you ideas and to have discussions with and bounce ideas around. Feel free to add any other detail that you would like in the chat. And let me see if there's anything in the chat as well. And Ola had asked about the 3 parts of the method, which we have talked about, and I'll just go ahead and repeat them because it will make it easier for you especially if you have just joined late, like David, welcome. That is to gather your crowd, build connections, take small steps. You gather your crowd with your big idea, which is anything that you want to make happen in your community. And you use that with an announcement, with discussion, with finding the one person who can help you, and you helping reach out and network from there. And then from gathering your crowd, you move to building connections. And that is where you turn your crowd into a powerful network, because you're having those conversations and asking the questions that bring you the resources that you need. And then from gathering your crowd and building connections, you take small steps. And you take small steps because that is the easiest way to learn what is going to work and to make the idea happen in a meaningful way. So I know that we have gone fairly short here. I want to know if you have any questions, if you'd like to share an idea that you are working on, or something that you would like to see happen in a community, please put that into the chat or the Q&A. And I want to share another story with you, something practical that any of you can do no matter where you go for your work or where you end up living. And that is to keep a success list. And I got this idea from Carol Peterson, who is from Milnor, North Dakota, which has a population of 600 to 700 people. So it's not a big town. Carol got a job working in the economic development for her community. And when she started, she began to keep track of all progress, every new business, every public improvement. So anytime a business opened or a business expanded, or they hired new people and grew, every time that business successfully transitioned and changed hands from one generation to the next, she kept track of all of these things. All of the public improvements, when they improved the local park, when they added new art, they added a wildlife viewing area. So each of these improvements, she kept track of all of those. She said she was encouraged to do this by a mentor of hers. And Carol said, if everyone would keep track of what they're doing, they will be very surprised at what they have accomplished. I really recommend this to you. It's something that I have done as well. And the reason is everyone likes to be part of something that is working. And people will tell you about a town. Oh, there's nothing going on here. Oh, we're just a dying town. We don't have anything good happening. So from the moment that you first come into contact with that community, start writing down each success that you see happen and share those successes publicly so that you can become the gathering point. You're gathering your crowd around something positive that is happening in your community. Another part of going back to gathering your crowd, another thing to keep in mind is that when you create a public activity and you share that publicly, you want to also do it in a way that people can see so that you have a chance for people to ask what's going on. Think about Heidi and her running club. She was able to have that first run. I'm sure many people saw them running or walking together. That also generated additional conversation and became something that they could have those conversations and helped gather new people to their crowd. I'm going to give you just a minute if you have another question that you want to ask or anything that you would like to bring up. Another project that can help bring people together. Oh, we have a question here. All right. My question is about how, as an international student without PR yet, feel at home in rural areas doing farming, like start my own farm. This is a really good question. So I think that PR means permanent residency. So someone correct me if I'm making an incorrect assumption there. So without permanent residency, to feel at home in a rural area, doing farming, like starting your own farm. And I'm thinking through all of the different implications of that, because especially as an international student, you've left behind your family and where you come from and all of the culture that you grew up in, and now you're living in a completely different culture. So especially in farming, if you're not starting your own actual farm yet, or you're looking at ways to work towards that, my first thought is about maybe something with community gardening, a way that you could start building community around growing food together. Community gardening is where you find a common area where you get permission to plant a garden for growing of food. And so then the food that is produced can be shared back into the community. Okay. And I can think of, forgot to hit answering live. So I think that one reason I thought immediately of community gardening is because it's about, again, it's something that can help you gather a crowd around an idea. You can build connections to find the resources you need. It's also something that you can take small steps. It can start as simple as with one flower pot that's in a public location and a little sign that says, let's start a community garden. Text me at this number to start the conversation about finding the people who are also interested in growing food together. I think another piece would be to find some of the other young people in the community already who are also in the just starting out stage, or maybe they are young and they are, as I come from an agricultural family myself, those succession issues are very tricky for the second generation or third generation. And so for those younger people that are not yet running the operation, they may be very open to having friendship and conversation with people who are also in a starting out position. So I recommend that you look for people who are kind of similarly situated there. Another piece that I think speaks specifically to the fact that you are international students is to bring something of your unique culture and your home to this new home. Because the definition of culture is the intersection of people and place. And so you are bringing, as a person there, you are bringing some of your culture with you, and you are sharing it with the culture you are in. Is there something about your ways of preparing food or growing food that you can share with this community? Is there something of your own culture that you can come and bring as part of your contribution to the place that you live? I feel like an important issue is going to be the feeling of isolation, of how hard it is to build those meaningful connections in the community. So make sure that you know the kinds of things you're interested in or that you would just like to try, so that you can be reaching out to people who are already involved in those to build those relationships. Thank you very much for that question. Feel free to ask any other questions. And another opportunity to help you build connections into communities is to work on creating farm tours. Farm tours can be as simple as having farmers that are visiting each other's farms for educational purposes. Many times these are organized by extension or university groups. And it can also be a tourism program, so that you are helping bring people into the area so that they can experience farming life, how food is grown, opportunities to taste and try different foods that are grown in that area. And so working on projects that help bring people to the local farms is also an opportunity to help engage in gathering your crowd, people who are also interested in boosting tourism in the area, building connections, finding those other farmers, and finding the people who are interested in supporting this kind of a project through their own finances or sharing their opportunities, and then taking small steps. You don't have to start with a full-fledged tour and trying to hope that you get 50 people from the nearby big city to come in, but also to start small. How about exchanges with neighboring towns or with people you know from university or your connections from your university? How can you help to make this kind of exchange happen? So tours between the different farms. Oops. The next question is, from your experience, what's your perspective on people management in relation to community building? This is a very good question, because I talked a little about the skepticism that you are bound to run into in any community that you are part of. I run into it all the time in mine, so I know you will run into it in yours as well. And an important thing that I have learned over my lifetime is that I can't change anyone else. If they're skeptical, they can be skeptical. If they're against me, they can be against me. If they're interested, then I would like to bring them on. And so people management starts with me and how I present myself in the community. So rather than saying, I've decided we will have a running club, it will operate on this route, and we will be doing this kind of thing, and you can join me or not, is not going to bring as many people to me as the approach that Heidi used of saying, I would like to have a running club. We're starting a running club. It's just beginning. You can help me shape it. Here's one possible route. What else do you think? So I know I've used that example, but you can do the same thing with your own ideas of presenting them in a way that it allows people to participate. So in gathering your crowd, you're looking for people who are interested, and you're generating an experience they can be part of. So you are doing more enticing rather than trying to convince someone. So instead of being right up and I'm trying to convince you that I'm right, I'm trying to create something that you want to be a part of too, and that you can help create with me. And I think that that is the most important part of people management, is offering more people the opportunity to create the thing together, so that it is an expression of community and is not simply me ordering you around. Thank you very much for that question. I see in the chat that Ola says, I like this idea about bringing ideas from my home country. I will be looking more into this, though still not sure about acceptability to the rural communities in Canada. I understand that. And also, Ola, I want to tell you, Ola is my grandmother's name, so it is a very honorable name. I think that acceptability is easiest to start with food, because everyone eats and we all like to eat. And so by sharing food first, it's the most enjoyable and easy piece to share a part of where you come from and what you do. Another thing that I think that lots of people can be interested in is storytelling. And so if you have some great stories, then that is if you can create a storytelling event where people are going to share stories from wherever they grew up, then that's another piece that's really easy and non-threatening. And you can continue to build on these small wins as you take small steps and you entice people. So you're gathering your crowd and you're building connections because we're having those conversations as people about, I really like the way this tastes, or what a great story. Another one that I have found when I've traveled internationally is songs. When I was in Tanzania, I had the opportunity I sang, this is so silly, don't laugh at me, but I sang a silly children's song that came to mind. And a young woman named, oh my gosh, I remember her name, Moyo, Asia Moyo. Asia Moyo was her name. And she sang for me a silly children's song from her culture. So we exchanged silly children's songs. So I think you could make a singing event as well. That's not a scary thing. That doesn't have to be, I'm not trying to convince you to be a different person. I'm just trying to entice you in with a fun event like sharing songs. Mobola has asked me a question that I do not know the answer to. Do you think quota buying will encourage new farmers? I have no earthly idea about that. I am not a policy expert. The policies are changing in the United States right now too rapidly for me to keep up with. And so I'm not going to, I don't know what will happen with quota buying. I know that there will be a lot of uncertainty. There will be a lot of uncertainty in all of our futures for several years. And so the best things that we can do are to be resilient people as we are, to do as much as we can to be prepared for anything that may happen. I hope that lots of things will encourage new farmers. I know in the United States, we have, much like in Canada, a lot of older farmers who are going to need to figure out their transition. And otherwise that land will just be bought by investors and not by people who care about the community or care about growing food or care about feeding people or care about the work of working with animals and taking care of them in a good way. So I hope that we take all the steps we possibly can to encourage more new farmers. So that was not a policy answer. Okay. Ola says, can you please share an example of a time when a small student-led or grassroots idea made a lasting impact on a rural town? I would love to do that. Let's see if I have share. I do have share. I have share. Okay, so let me, I'm going to share my screen first of all. So if you were here at the very beginning of this, then you heard me talk about painting murals together, that Ross Turn in Saskatchewan painted murals together with the circle design. So that is what you see on the screen right now. And I would love to share this idea about a student-led project. So let's go down here to the bottom. Here we go. So this is a story from Miller, South Dakota, which had a population of about 1,500 people. They have a group of high school students, so they are not even university students yet, but they heard a presentation at an event called Rural X that my colleague Deb Brown and I presented, the Idea Friendly Method. And we talked about having businesses inside of sheds. So I'll show you a picture of what the sheds that we showed them. So we showed them this example, which is, I can make that a little larger. They have used storage sheds to make a business incubator. And this has happened in a town in Pennsylvania called Tionesta. So from that story, these high school students came up with the idea of doing a temporary pop-up version of this. So they borrowed the sheds. They didn't have money to buy sheds or a place to put them. And so what those students came up with the idea was, if we use sheds, we'll borrow them. So they went to the person who sold sheds. So there's a lot where they display sheds for sale. And they went there, and during an event that was already happening in the community called Christmas on the Prairie, I think it is, they invited local businesses or people who just had a hobby business to come and exhibit and set up their business temporarily inside one of these sheds. And so they had someone, so you can see there's baked goods. There was a photo booth. You could dress up as Santa. They had a little fire pit outside. There was a business that sold Asian fusion cuisine from this shed in Miller, South Dakota. So that was definitely a new thing for the community. But what it showed is that there was an interest in these ideas. And in fact, that Asian fusion cuisine turned into a restaurant. They used that as the launching point of their business. So that was definitely a success. The other thing is they had so much fun. The businesses responded so positively. More people wanted to be involved, but they also found it was really, really cold at the Christmas event to be in these sheds. So they did it again in July. They called it Christmas in July, and they were part of some other community event that was going on in the middle of the year. And they have continued to do that year after year now. So it has become an event in their community. And they started by, they gathered their crowd. They found other people who were willing to put together businesses to be in the sheds. They built connections with the people who sold the sheds so that they didn't have to purchase them, and also with the people who ran the Christmas event so that they could connect with an audience that was already going to be there. And they took this small step. They just tried it temporarily. They didn't make this a permanent thing. And because they had just borrowed it, they did it during the event, then they could adapt. They did it again in summer when it was warmer. So there's all three parts of the idea-friendly method. And I think it's really great that the students who took the lead on it were named Dylan and Camden. And I thought it was a wonderful example of someone taking the idea-friendly method and using it to create an event that has been an ongoing success and an economic driver and innovation driver in their communities. Okay, the next question comes from Samuel, who says, can you highlight some important skills one needs to have in building connections, considering the age bracket of people living in rural communities? Okay, so let's talk about the age bracket of people living in rural communities and how you connect. This kind of goes two ways. I do know that as you are all in the International Student Organization, you are in the university student age group, and the average population in any rural area is going to be older. That's just the way, that's just the truth about rural communities. I think that part of how we bridge the gap between the generations and between the different cultures is through listening. Older people have a tendency to feel that they are maybe not as important to the community as they once were, or that they don't get listened to as well. And so the more that you can listen to them, then they can feel that you respect them. So listening is an important skill. On the other hand, those folks should also listen to you and show respect to you. They won't always, but this is at least in my experience in my lifetime. Sometimes it's hard to get them to listen back to younger people. The next thing is to ask their advice, because everybody likes to give advice. So if you can find an opportunity to ask for their input on something. And the other thing is to come back, if you are creating something, if you can offer them an opportunity to play a role in it that respects who they are and what they can bring, so what they're able to do and what they're motivated to do. So if you're doing a food kind of event, you may ask them, do you remember or have recipes from your parents? Or do you have things that, stories you know about foods in your family? Could you come and share a story about a food thing? Or can we just shoot a video of, or take a picture of your recipe cards? So finding ways that you can listen, ask questions, and involve people. Again, not try to convince them that your idea is right, but try to entice them into something that you are doing. So I hope that that is helpful for you, Samuel. Okay. The next question is, can you share some more about skills for international? Oh, wait, I think this might be the same starting. Can you share more about skills for international students to build connections? It seems it's a bit easier for domestic students than international students. And that makes sense, doesn't it? If you're trying to talk to people who are in the same culture as you, who grew up with a lot of the same environment and surroundings, then those will be people that it'll be easier for you to talk to. So it does require some more skills to do that work of building connections. one thing is, I'm sure as international students, you are skilled at observing people, that you are watching what other people are doing and how they do it, because you've had to learn how to work within this additional culture. You've done a lot of looking at how people do things and using those skills to observe what is going on is a great starting point. And so recognize that you do have those kind of skills, and it will not be as easy as for you as it would be for someone who grew up there, but you bring something different, and your difference is memorable. And so you want it to be a positive difference that people will remember that you asked questions and learned, and also that you shared something back. And I think that the most important part of that is learning to create things that bring people together, as opposed to trying to convince people that they should change what they are doing. There's an example from, it's from Ontario, and they were trying to convince local business owners that they should be getting involved with social media for marketing in the 2010s era. Now, this was a hard sell because business owners were older and they were more established in their ways, and they had always done their marketing the way they had always done their marketing. And so they were trying to find a way to convince those business owners they should learn it. So they had tried putting on classes, and the business owners would not turn out. Or if they did come, they would go, "That won't work for me. That'll never work." And so the method of like trying to teach them or convince them they were wrong was not working to reach those business owners. And so they flipped this idea, and they came up with the idea of using people who knew the tools, who would bring business to the business around the social media tools so that they would get involved. And so they called it Tweet Folk Tours. It was in Norfolk County in Ontario. And they were looking for people who were big on Twitter at the time. I said it was the 2010s. So they reached those, we would call them influencers now, local people who had a relatively big following, and they would bring them to local businesses for an experience. So one of the examples was they got to tour a local winery. And so they all brought their phones, and they shot live videos, and they took photos, and they shared with their people, and they wrote about it online. And the businesses were excited because this brought them the tour group, as well as then all that online attention. So the businesses wanted to be part of it. So they made the requirement the businesses had to at least start a Twitter account and become active. And while the people were together, while that tour group was there and they were touring, they were teaching those business owners some of their skills. So the business owners would ask, "Oh, what are you doing there? How does that work? What's this hashtag thing mean?" So they were able to have those conversations. They enticed the business owners into wanting to be part of it, instead of trying to convince them they were doing it wrong. That was a really long answer to that question. But I think that it helps you to see that if you can make something happen that they want to be part of, they're more likely to be willing to change or try something new if it becomes something they want to be part of. So you can see they gathered their crowd of starting with business owners and also influencers, people that wanted to be involved. They built connections in finding all of the different people that they could bring on the tour, reaching out to different business owners in the community so that they were finding all of the things they needed to make it happen. And they took the small step of holding one tour first and seeing how it went. And they just tried to reach one business owner at a time and taught them just a few new skills. And so it's a very idea-friendly approach of enticing people to do something instead of trying to convince them to do something. Okay. Deborah says, "Thank you." All right, you are welcome. Okay, so another question has just come in. Can you share some fundraising ideas, and also what population is considered rural? Is it the same as in the USA and Canada? Which is a good question. I'll take the rural definition question first. There are in the United States bunches of different definitions depending on which different federal agencies are involved. We have an incredibly complex governing system, and so different agencies use different definitions. And it may be anything as small as you may need to be under population 2,500 people, or it may be as large as 50,000 people. So it just varies. When I run my survey, I don't ask people to fit into a definition of rural. I just say, this is the survey of rural challenges. And if that's you, then come on into it. I have looked, and then Canada has a completely different set of definitions for rural. The Census Bureau, I think, has the most accepted one in Canada, and I do not remember what it is off the top of my head. But I think that if you see a community as rural, then that's a good starting point, unless you have something specific that you need to do there. But fundraising ideas was the second part of this, or the first part of this question was fundraising ideas. I think that the experience that you're creating can be part of your fundraiser. I talked about the community Baker, Montana, that received a tiny $500 startup seed money and held an event that they were able to make that into $800. But again, they had that $500, and that's a starting point that you may not have in your hand right away to start a project. So you want to think of ways that you can do it cheaper. Remember the students who didn't have money to buy the sheds, so they just borrowed them. What can you borrow? And how can you make your idea smaller so that so that the idea itself becomes part of the fundraiser? For the running club, maybe they want to hold a 5K run, or they want to hold a run walk or a fun event that people would pay a small amount to be part of. So there's opportunities to do your fundraiser that relates to your idea so that it brings money to you. And I think that that's the most promising fundraising idea that I can give you, is to find a way to make your own idea help fund itself. And then, yeah, I think that's the place I'm going to leave it, rather than start off with some fundraising stories from my past, because they're all out of date. Okay. The next question is back from Samuel. It says, people are generally risk averse. This is true. What are some pointers you can watch out for to a likelihood of success when taking small steps from your experience? The first one is just to make those steps as small as possible, so that you are establishing a little bit of social proof each time you make a step. So if the first step is something that is really small that just you are doing, then that's going to help establish that proof. There's a woman in Elkhart, Kansas, who told me that she wanted to hold a community dinner where they shut down the big main street and like have a long table all the way down the middle of the street, and the whole community turns out and they all eat at the same table and feel like they're part of the same community. That's her dream. And I said the first step to that is to call one friend and to make a picnic, or just a meal you can go and eat outside. Take a small folding table and set up in a parking lot or on a sidewalk, and use that. Set up, go eat in public. And if anyone stops, you can explain to them what you are doing, and you can take some pictures. You can put it onto social media. You can share it and email it around. And using that first small step was so small. If no one else turns out, then they've not risked very much. The smaller you make the step, the less you are risking. And then the success of that step carries you to the next step. So don't ever take giant leaps if you can figure out a way to build your way there with small steps. And I think that is our best way to avoid making risk very costly. You know, the cost, if we can keep the cost of failure really low, then it doesn't matter if we failed too much. So keep the cost of failure really low by keeping the size of the steps that you take very, very small. Okay, I hope that was a helpful explanation. We are coming up on our time. So if you have any last questions, now is the chance to throw them in. And I will put into the chat my, one last question. Okay, I'm going to put my contact information into the chat right now, so that if you wish to reach out to me after this, you can. This is my email address, and you can find, we do a newsletter, and I want to share the address where you can get our newsletters if you're interested by email, because we share practical steps and stories every week. And here is the question. My question is about sustaining the idea after starting it. Once an idea gets off the ground, how can I keep the momentum going and engage others over the long term? Start by engaging them at the very beginning as much as possible. So we talked about giving small but meaningful roles to lots of people. So if we can divide that responsibility out to more and more people, that's going to help sustain the momentum over time. If Heidi can't come to running club, if she has half a dozen other people who come all the time, then she doesn't have to be there every single time. It will have momentum on its own. And that's the way she designed it from the beginning, by saying, let's form this together. The students who created the businesses and sheds, if those students have graduated high school, which they have by now, then there will be, as long as they are continuing to involve lots of people in small but meaningful ways, it doesn't rely on one single person. So provide people opportunities to be involved in small ways so that they can feel like they are part of the idea and that they want to carry it forward as it goes into the future, so that it's not all on your shoulders entirely. But each of those small steps, the smaller you make it, then the less motivation they have to have in order to actually do the thing. So then you don't have to look just for the few people with a giant level of motivation who are willing to do tons of work to maintain the idea. If we have lots of people with little motivation, then we can spread that responsibility out further. So I hope that that's helpful for you as well. Okay.
Thank you very much, Becky. That was great. And I myself, I learned a lot on many of the high hope playing ideas that you shared with us today. Thank you so much. At this point, I would like to ask you one word takeaway questions for our audience. If someone watching us today wanted to take one small action this week using the idea-friendly method that you shared with us, what would you suggest that they do? I know that depends on the type of idea they are having in mind, but maybe a general takeaway advice for our audience.
Yes. So the first thing is to identify what is something that you want to make happen. And then my next step would be to find someone else, just one other person who can believe in that with you, and get together with them in person if at all possible, so that you can share your excitement with each other, because that will help bring your energy up. And together with that person, figure out a small step you can take right away. So right now, the thing you can do is to not only figure out what your idea is, at least a general concept of what you would like to see happen, but to send a text or send a message to someone else so that you can double your energy by getting in connection with someone else who will help you come up with ideas and ways to make it happen. Find your idea, find your first person, send that text or message today.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to our audience today. Thank you for making it. And we continue this webinar once every month. Last Saturday of every month is the time that we host this webinar. Please join us for the next one, which is going to be in April. Thank you very much for joining today. And thank you, Becky, once again. Have a wonderful day.